The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Keita McCrory, and I'm the coaching program coordinator here at Canada Snowboard. Tonight, Roberto is going to be delivering the webinar. We're just going to hang tight for a couple minutes because we only have about half the registered people signed in right now, so we're just going to give them a couple more minutes to get online. All right, everybody. So we're going to get started now. Roberto, if you wanted to take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Kira. My name is Roberto Montanes. I'm the Senior Coordinator of Events and Competitions at Canada Snowboard. So I basically um, run all the events in collaboration with our provincial territorial associations. And tonight, just going to give you a pretty kind of like open overview of what is our pathways, going through a little bit every single event that we have in Canada. And at the end, we're going to go over some questions, and especially for coaches, there are some of our events, and making sure that we can answer as many questions as you guys have. In the meantime, we divide this webinar in 3 blocks. So I'm going to wait every each block to go over some of your questions. If you do still have some questions at the end of the webinar, you can always send me an email, and I will try to answer everything as quick as possible. But if not, we're going to get started and see if you guys, or I can give you some lights at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so on the first topic, we're going to talk about pathways. And one of the things that we need to understand is when we talk about pathways, there is different pathways, competition pathways. And we always going to talk in Canada about the Canada Snowboard pathway. But inside of each pathway, we have different ones. One of the things that some of the people ask us all the time is like, how is the sport structured, and who are our partners internationally, who are our partners nationally, and to who do we work with to deliver the different competitions and events that we have in Canada. The sport system in Canada is kind of like under one single umbrella, that is the Canadian Snow Sport Association. So on the Canadian, we have different national snow sport associations that goes from Freestyle Canada to Telemark to Alpine Canada to us, Canada Snowboard. When it goes down to international relationships, there is 2 ways of relationship. One is the institutional relationship that we have with our international partners. One is the FIS, International Ski Federation. Second one is the World Snowboard Federation. And the third one is the World Para Snowboard Federation. We, as an NSO, we work directly with them to deliver competitions. From an institutional side, the Canadian Snow Sports Association is the one who collaborates and talks directly on behalf of Canada Snowboard with FIS, in this case. In the other side, with the Canadian Paralympic Committee are the ones who talk directly with the World Parasnowboard or the International Paralympic on behalf of Canada Snowboard. And with the one that we have right in the middle with the World Snowboard Federation, we have a direct conversation both from a competition standpoint and from an institutional standpoint. The other point is when we get all this information, all this communication from the international federations, we do always rely on our provincial and territorial associations to deliver competitions. Canada Snowboard does not run events. We work directly with our, in this case, our PTSAs to deliver competitions across Canada, and they are the ones who talk directly with the organizers. Sometimes we collaborate to work together with the organizers. Sometimes we just relate directly on our PTSAs to deliver our events. But what is important here to understand is that our role as an NSO is not to be organizing events. It's more to make sure that those events across Canada are delivered at the level that needs to be. A very important component on all this working structure is one thing that we call the Canada Snowboard Technical Program Committee. So this little group over here is just a group that works in collaboration with the NSO and with the provincial and territorial snowboard associations to ensure that the rules and the guidelines that we have nationally are fair and they are standardized across the board. That's something this committee was created last year. So we just starting to work with them. And the goal of this committee is to ensure that by 2019, we're going to have clear rules nationally and clear guidelines for every event that we have, that we host in our country, and to ensure that athletes, coaches, and parents get all the information needed to go and to participate at those events. Taking a little bit more this Canada Snowboard Technical Program Committee is a combination of different stakeholders. As I said, our provincial and territorial associations are our eyes and ears on the ground, and we have two representatives of our PTSAs at this committee. One represents our largest provinces, and one represents our smaller provinces. That ensures that we have fair representation of our members in this committee. The other group is our judges working group. Our judges community is very big and very strong in Canada, even internationally. In this case, we do have one member who represents the judges, the Canadian judges in this committee. And he's always going to be the one who's going to be our main point of contact with our judges. The third group is the officials. We do have an officials working group. And again, similar to the judges, our officials are very strong, and we have a lot of international officials working in World Cups or World Championship at this point. And we do have one member at this table who talks on behalf of the officials. The last two groups is the coaching working group and the the Canada Snowboard High Performance Department. The coaching working group is a group that speaks on behalf of all the coaches in Canada. This is probably one of the most interesting ones because sometimes our coaches, they don't know they can actually influence or have an impact on the rules, not just nationally, but internationally. And the way how to improve the system is by making sure that we are sharing these comments and sharing the knowledge across the different stakeholders. For the coaches working group, we do have a representative that in this case is Chris Knack, and he's a coach from BC. And his role at this committee is to make sure that if there is something that needs to be changed, even if it's from a logistics standpoint or from a rule perspective, to make sure that this CSTPC, this Canada Snowboard Technical Program Committee, gets the information and can evaluate the information to make changes in the future. Getting a little bit more into what is our Canada Snowboard pathway. As I said before, the pathway is a very open word that we always use, but we don't actually understand what it means. Obviously, some of you will probably know already. In Canada, we have what we call the long-term athlete development that is divided by different stages. So every single stage represent a type of athlete, a type of event, and this LTD was made to ensure that the athletes can have a pathway to grow as athletes and they can reach the level they need and they can hopefully get into the Olympics in the future. When we look a little bit more into difference between Canada's snowboard pathway or the international pathways, we do have, as I said before, 3 international members: FIS, World Snowboard Federation, and the World Para Snowboard Federation. As a national association, we need to ensure that we are providing a pathway for every single athlete into these 3 different international federations. So when we look at this graphic here, we can see that even if we talk about international pathways and national pathway, for us, we're always going to talk about Canada Snowboard Pathway. In there, we're going to see events that are more targeted for FIS athletes, other events that are going to be more for athletes who wants to get more into the World Snowboard Federation, and then athletes will have events out there that are more for adaptive or para snowboard in this case. We're going to break it down a little bit more. So now we're going to put aside what we always call about Canada Snowboard Pathway, and we're going to look a little bit more into each international pathway. The World Snowboard Federation pathway, or what is more targeted for athletes with physical disability, is made to ensure that if we have athletes with amputations or athletes who have hemiplegics or any athlete who is eligible to participate under the International Paralympic Committee, has events closer to the area in Canada to ensure that they can progress and they can hopefully they can probably reach our para-national team and compete at the Paralympics. So in Canada, looking more into the different LTD stages, we do have events that provide that platform for athletes. Starting from the top, from the World Cups, we host a Para World Cup every year in BC, in Big White. And last year we were hosting the World Championship and it was very successful. And is an annual event that we have and is very consistent. For those type of events at this international level, we do require an IPC license or an International Paralympic license to compete at these events as a Canada Snowboard license. At the stage underneath, at the stage number 6, we have events that serves more for North American athletes, and that's more for athletes that are more suitable to reach this World Cup level. So at this time in Canada, we do not have a specific Continental Cup tour for para snowboard, but we do have a very strong Border Cross National Championship that at the same time is part of the what we call IPC North American Tour. This year, this event is gonna be held at Big White again. So during our national championships, all para snowboard athletes will have the opportunity to compete at those events. At the stage 4, what is called more or provincial series, or para snowboarders can actually access to events. We only require a Canada Snowboard license, and specific. Sometimes we actually require as well to have approval from a coach, just to make sure they can actually ride a proper course and they don't or some of our events. Right now, most of all Border Cross provincial series across Canada allow para athletes. In case you have an athlete or you know somebody who would like to compete at the provincial level, my suggestion will be just to contact your provincial association and check if they have a Border Cross event coming soon, and make sure as well they're going to allow para athletes to complete. At the lowest stage, what we call stage 3, now we do have a national Grand Series that is more made to ensure that we can have more athletes, that we can kind of like increase the number of participants across the country. And at some of these events, we actually allow para athletes. Same strategy as the provincial series. You have an athlete who wants to compete and who would love to try. Please make sure you contact your provincial association and check if you can or not compete at these events. Looking to what we call more the World Snowboard Federation pathway, just as a side note, for the World Snowboard Federation, when we're talking about this pathway, we're only going to talk about freestyle events. So everything that is big air events, half pipe events, or slopestyle events. So make sure that if you hear of you talking about World Snowboard Federation, we're only going to talk about freestyle disciplines. Again, pretty similar. When we talk about stage 7, which will be any event that is international or an event that is well recognized internationally, we do have an event in Canada that happens in Quebec, that is the World Cup Jamboree, that at the same time is sanctioned by the FIS in this case, but is actually sanctioned as well by the World Snowboard Federation. So any athlete competing at the World Cup in Quebec will get as well World Snowboard points. For this event, obviously, we require a Canada Snowboard sanction, with Canada Snowboard license, and we do actually require a FIS license. Looking more into the stage 6, we have a national tour that is sanctioned by the World Snowboard Federation, and we call it the Air Nation Freestyle Tour. So this tour, we put it together like a couple of years ago, and over the last years, we went from 1 event to 4 events, or actually our national championships are the finals of the tour. Some of these events are actually part of the North American FIS Tour, which I will explain a little bit later. But just keep in mind that we do have a very solid tour for those athletes who are trying to reach the national team, or they're trying to reach future World Cups or future international events. If you have an athlete who is willing to compete at these events, just make sure you contact your provincial association and see if you can or not compete at those events. At this time, we have an event in BC that actually the first event is going to be next week at Sun Peaks. We do have another event in Ontario at Mont Saint Louis Moonstone. Third event is going to happen at Mont Tremblant in Quebec. And the finals will be at COP in Alberta the first week of March. Looking more into the stage 4, it's pretty similar to what we were talking before about the Border Cross series. Every PTSA has their own provincial or territorial freestyle series. Some of these events will be part of the World Snowboard Federation, some other not. If you really want to check which events are part or not of the World Snowboard Federation, you can go into Canada Snowboard website and you will see which events are part or not of the World Snowboard Federation. At this time, any of the stage 3 events are sanctioned by the World Snowboard Federation. And the reason why is because the stage 3 events are made more for fun, and they're not part of the competitive pathway. And so we do not sanction any of our stage 3 events by the World Snowboard Federation. The last international pathway is the International Ski Federation pathway, or what we call FIS. As I said before, at the stage 7, we do have one of our World Cups in Quebec that is also sanctioned by the World Snowboard Federation, and is basically the main sanction is done by FIS. At this stage level, obviously, we do require a Canada Snowboard membership and a FIS membership. But what is important here to understand is that the International Ski Federation pathway is the pathway that we use to send athletes to the Olympics. So when we look to performance and when we look to build our international teams to let's say to go to Korea this year, we make sure we pay a lot of attention to our FIS pathway, because that's the one who's going to help us to build our athletes to go and represent Canada to the Olympics. At the stage 6, we do have, as I said before, the Air Nation Freestyle Tour. But here we're adding 2 extra tours. One is basically more for motocross, and the third one is made for alpine events. All what is parallel slalom. Every tour has different events across Canada, and you can find all the information on our website. And pretty similar to the one that I said before with the Air Nation Freestyle Tour, we do require Canada Snowboard membership, and we do require a FIS license to compete at those events. The same strategy as the Air Nation Freestyle Tour, the motocross and the alpine has their finals are the national championships. So if you have any event any athlete wants to compete at those events, please make sure to look to our website or contact your provincial territorial association. At the stage 4, we do have some events that are part of FIS in this case. Not all the stage 4 events are sanctioned by the International Ski Federation. Some of them yes, some of them not. So if you have athletes who want to compete and kind of like follow the FIS pathway, make sure to log into our website and see which events are not, or they are part of the FIS. Quick overview of the entire Canada Snowboard pathway. So now we're putting all 3 international pathway together, and we're going to look to how is our event structure looking at. As I said before, we look into the stage 3 events. In this case, what we call our Grand Series events. They are not put it here, but they're actually not part of any of the international pathways. They're just going to be sanctioned by Canada Snowboard, and they're not part of the competitive pathway neither. We use those events to promote the sport and to increase the participants. At the stage 4, we have Alpine Series and Motocross Series that are part of FIS, they're part of Canada Snowboard, and in some cases they're actually part of the World Para Snowboard Federation. In the case of the Freestyle Provincial and Territorial Series, they're only going to be part of the FIS pathway and the World Snowboard Federation pathway. What we said before about the Speed Nation Motocross Tour, the Nation Freestyle Tour, and the Speed Nation Alpine Tour, pretty similar. And if you look into the World Cup portion of it here, at this point we only have one able-bodied World Cup that is happening in Quebec, and we have a Paris Snowboard World Cup happening in Big White. So before to get into our second topic, if you have any question, please feel free to ask, and I will try to answer all these questions as better as possible.
So guys, you are all on mute, but if you have any questions, please feel free to fill out the question box, and I will read them back to Roberto. Charles, I saw you raised your hand, so I unmuted you so that you could ask your question.
Yeah, well, what is the question box you're talking about?
Oh, if you are on a computer on the GoToWebinar application, there's a question tab, and you can just click the little triangle and it'll bring you to a question box, and it'll say type your answer or type your question here.
It's weird, I don't see any of a triangle or something like that. Okay, well, I guess I have something different on my computer.
That's okay. You can ask your question now if you have one. That's not about a question box.
Yeah, well, I was wondering if we were willing to organize, let's say, a World Cup competition, who are we supposed to talk with, and like what is the steps that needs to be done in order that to happen?
Thanks for your question. That's a very great question. So there's different ways to do it, but the best way for you to see if we can or not to support a World Cup is you always, the first step is to present, to share like a project with your provincial or territorial snowboard association. So like for example, you want to organize a World Cup in Ontario. You first need to contact your Snowboard Ontario, present a project, talk with their executive director, and then the executive director will talk to me, and we'll see if something that we can or not support. Um, Something that we need to understand is like sometimes we have great ideas about organizing events, but everything goes down to the money. In Canada Snowboard, we're trying to support. We're going to always support events that make sense from 5 different pillars. One is financially. If it makes sense financially, we can support it. We'll try to support it. The second one, and the most important one, is performance. If it doesn't make sense for our national team to have an event in the whole our country, we probably won't support it. Give an example. If we already have a slopestyle World Cup, we won't probably support a second slopestyle World Cup. Just saying, as an example. The third one is legacy. Legacy is a huge is a word that we always use, but nobody actually knows what actually means. In our section, for us, legacy means that there's going to be a return to the sport, even if it's from sport development, like creating more opportunities for our local athletes to perform, or if is there like if we can get something to organize other lower level events thanks to that World Cup. And there's other ones like sponsorship and kind of like international representation of a country. So if you have a project in mind and you think that financially can make sense, then it will make sense for us from a high performance level, and that will create a great opportunities for your sports in your area. Just try to present that project to your provincial association, and then we will kind of review that project between Canada Snowboard and Provincial Association. You always need to understand that any World Cup, in order to get a World Cup sanction, it needs to be approved by Canada Snowboard. You won't get approval for a World Cup sanction or a World Snowboard Federation sanction without the approval of Canada Snowboard. So we need to make sure that it makes sense for the nation, for the country, and that's the way for us to try to support it financially and institutionally as well.
Charles, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. A very precise answer. I'm very satisfied with the answer. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Charles. All right, we have one more question from Sharon, and she asked, should all provinces be considering para as part of their provincial sport programs as an official category, in particular Quebec, where there are 2 para athletes registered?
Thanks, Sharon. I think you and I talked about this several times. Yes, short answer is yes. And we are working towards that direction. And I'm actually, as the event leader at Canada Snowboard, work very close with, in this case, with Kim Krahulik, which is the person who runs the Para Snowboard program at Canada Snowboard. And our goal is to ensure that we have a very solid pathway from a competition standpoint for para athletes. We did, like Kim and with her program, did tremendous jobs creating partnership with other national organizations that support para athletes, and we're slowly getting there. It's not, sometimes we feel like we still don't have enough events out there for para snowboard, but the reality is that over the last years we improve a lot the number of events, and more to that, we improve a lot the support of our provincial associations and our provincial governments to support para. If you remember at the beginning, we we're talking about the Canada Snowboard Technical Program Committee. as part of their mandate is to ensure there's going to be a clear, sustainable pathway for able and para athletes. So as soon we're going to have those rules, national rules and guidelines set up, because it will be probably at the end of this winter. The goal is to make sure that we're supporting enough our provincial and territorial associations to have sustainable para snowboard competition pathways in each province and territories.
Sharon, does that answer your question? Feel free to give me a hands up if it does, or type in the box. Not seeing anything. So we're going to move on. Pat Godet has a question. He says, you talked about 5 pillars. We noted 3. What would be the 4th and 5th?
So we talk about money, financial, rest of the countries or the rest of the
Hey,
world.
Roberto, you cut out a little bit there. Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, so I was saying like the first one was financial, the second one was performance of our athletes, third one will be legacy, the fourth one will be international representation, or like how well we're going to put ourselves to represent the nation to the rest of the world. And the last one will be sponsorship. How can we raise the public, like private side, the business side of the snowboard to get more support from private companies to support snowboard? That will be the fifth one.
All right, and we have another question from Max. After the Olympics, since big air is a discipline, are you going to be looking to have more big air events?
Yes, so we do have a Big Air World Cup that is part of the Big Air World Cup tour, and is actually going to be Big Air finals this year. We are working with, in this case, with USSA, which is kind of like the snowboard national association in the States, to start to work on a Big Air FIS NORAM tour next year. I don't think we're going to see next year Big Airs at the provincial level, but we're going to start to have more Big Airs events across Canada that will be sanctioned by FIS as a continental cups. In terms of World Cups, at this point, we're still going to support the event in Quebec. They were doing that event for a lot of years, and we're very happy with them. That being said, it's more difficult than that. We need always to ensure that always need to double check with the International Ski Federation to make sure that they don't want 100 events on the World Cup calendar. They want to keep it consistent and strong, and keep it like have like those events that are very strong and have a very solid schedule. So we got a commitment from FIS to keep doing our Big Air World Cup for the next years, and right now we're just working on continental cups to have at least 2 or 3 more Big Airs across Canada for our national athletes.
Perfect. And we have one more question. Oh, no, it's not a question. Charles found the question box. That's awesome. Perfect. All right. So I think we're going to move on to topic number 2 if there aren't any more questions. But if there are, feel free to type in the question box and I will interrupt and Roberto can answer them for you. So carry on, topic 2.
All right. Okay, we're going to look a little bit more into the different stages. Well, we talked before, I gave you a very big overview, but now we're going to go and check what are the target, where I can find information, what are the different sanctions, what kind of license my athletes need to compete, and we're going to do a very big overview of everything. And at the end, we're going to go over the different questions that you guys might have when you go in to the events or when you send your kid to your events. So we're going to start with the lower LTD stage, that in this case is where we have our Mazda Gram Series speed and style. So as I said before, the GRAM series, we just put it, we started to do some events last year, but this is the first year that we have that is supported nationally. And those types of events are more made to increase participation and make sure that the kids are happy and they're having fun and have a lot of high fives. And the goal here is to make sure that we're having a good time and making sure that they're starting to get into the competition level. Those events are more targeted for athletes that go from 6 to 12 years old. That doesn't mean that if you have 5, you cannot compete, or you have 13, you cannot compete. But our goal is to actually focus on those kids who are just starting to enjoy snowboard and they have potential to become, hopefully, Olympians in the future. You can find all the rules for the GRAM series are on Canada Snowboard website. We have a section on our website that talks about GRAM. You can find all the events across Canada. You can directly click on the calendar and register for the event. You can find the rules for those events, and you can actually find as well posters, and we have as well the logo if you want to share it in social media, and we have all the information in there. If you want to know more about your GRAM events, my suggestion will be just you can always email me, but it is always better to contact your Provincial Territorial Association to see if you have any question about registration or you want to know more about the schedule of the event. You can always contact your Provincial Territorial Association. My athletes will need a basic competitor, Canada Snowboard Basic Competitor license. Is the lowest license to compete at any Canada Snowboard event. Some provinces, they don't charge registration. Some other have like a very low registration fee to compete at those events. And it's more having fun. Every kid gets a little gift and we give stickers away and we have fun. So it's a very good platform to introduce competition to your athletes, and is as well a very good platform for coaches to start to travel with your kids and kind of experience that feeling of becoming a coach and being with your team around. Obviously, any of these events are sanctioned by any international federation. Is only going to be sanctioned by Canada Snowboard, and they're always going to be delivered by our provincial territorial associations. Let's get into the stage 4, all what we call a more provincial and territorial series. So we have one thing we need to understand is that not all the provinces and territories are at the same level. When I mean at the same level, they're not at the same level of development of their organization. You're going to have provinces like BC, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, or Nova Scotia that are very strong, that have staff, paid staff, working every day, and they have a lot of events, they have a lot of program, so their event structure is very solid and very strong. In those provinces, you're going to see more events, and you're going to see what we call more like a bordercross series, a freestyle series, and an alpine series. Same thing, not all the events at this stage level will be sanctioned by the International Federation. Some of the provincial series are going to be sanctioned only by Canada Snowboard, and some other will be sanctioned by Canada Snowboard and the International Ski Federation and or the World Snowboard Federation. The reason why is because we're trying to make sure that at this stage level, we have events that allow athletes to get that first feeling of competing, and then that we actually provide that first feeling of being an athlete and being part of an international pathway. If you want to know more about this, you can actually look at as well into our website. There is a section for provincial and territorial series. You have a live calendar. You can directly click on the button and register for the events, and you have all the information in there. If you still have questions, same thing, please contact your provincial or territorial association, and they will be more than happy to help you to get all the information about those events. one thing to make sure, like in that stage level, we're not talking anymore, or we try to not talk anymore about participants. We're trying to talk more about athletes. We're trying to build athletes that will have a potential to become Olympian or Paralympian in the future. The license needed to compete depends. It goes from basic competitor or advanced competitor, depending if it's sanctioned or not by the International Federation. If the event is sanctioned by FIS, you will require a FIS license to compete. If the event is sanctioned by the World Snowboard Federation, only Canadians are not allowed, that they don't need a license. And the reason why is because Canada Snowboard and we set up a partnership to ensure that our Canadians, they don't have
Roberto,
to
do you mind repeating
double,
that
like
again?
to
You
pay
just cut
another
it out a
license to
little
be
bit.
part of the World Snowboard Federation.
Hey,
Yeah, so I
sorry.
was saying, if the Provincial Territorial Association, if the Provincial Territorial event in this stage is sanctioned by FIS, you will require a FIS license. If it's sanctioned by the World Snowboard Federation, you won't need a World Snowboard Federation license, only if you're Canadian. And the reason why is because we had a partnership with Canada Snowboard and World Snowboard Federation. We have a partnership together, and we just agree that moving forward, Canadians will not require a World Snowboard Federation license. Now we're going to look more at stage, what we say, like the Air Nation Freestyle Tour, the Spin Nation Bordercross Tour, and the Spin Nation Alpine Tour. Those tours are more targeted for, like, they're served more for stage 5 and 6 stages of the LTAD. And here we're more serious at those tours. We're trying to make sure that the athletes who come to these events are actually training. They're actually trying to pursue something to get to probably be part of the next gen team, or be part of the provincial development team, or be part of a provincial team, or even a national team. In the case of the Air Nation Freestyle Tour, by rules, we only allow athletes that are 13 or plus. In very specific cases, we will allow under 13 athletes, but it will need to be approved by Canada Snowboard High Performance Department. If you have an athlete who is under 13, who wants to compete at one of the Air Nation events, he will need to contact Canada Snowboard, in this case me, and I will explain you how to kind of like check if he can or not compete. All the events part of the Air Nation Freestyle Tour are sanctioned by FIS, and they're actually sanctioned by World Snowboard Federation. Your athletes will need a Canada Snowboard license, in this case, advanced competitor. If you want to be listed on the FIS results, you will need to get a FIS license. And as I said before, all the athletes competing Canadian will not require a World Snowboard Federation license because of that deal that we have. Spin Nation Alpine Tour,
Roberto,
pretty similar.
Sorry, we just have another question. I'm just going to unmute David Morrison so he can answer. David, you're unmuted if you wanted to fire away. Okay, well, David, if you wanted to ask the question, feel free to type it in the question box or raise your hand again. But Stacy Hicks has asked a question, but for junior nationals, we have to open it without an approval, correct?
Sorry, can you say it again?
Stacy said, but for junior nationals, we have to have it open without an approval, have an open category.
Yes. So yeah, that was probably didn't share that, explain that well. When we talk about the Air Nation Freestyle Tour, is only events that are that not include junior nationals. Junior Nationals is part of the Air Nation Nationals, but is sanctioned as a Junior National Championship. So in that case, for the Junior Nationals, we allow under 13 athletes as well to compete. Only the events that are part of the Air Nation Freestyle Tour are those events that are sanctioned by FIS of North American Cup. They're part of the North American Tour, and events that are listed as part of the Air Nation Freestyle Tour. But Stacey is right, the Junior Nationals is part of the Air Nation Freestyle Nationals, the last stop of the Air Nation Freestyle Tour, but is a separate event from the Air Nation Freestyle Tour Open or Senior category that we're going to have.
Perfect. All right, David, I'm just going to try unmuting you again. David, did you want to ask your question? I think he's having some issues with his microphone.
Okay, well, we can...
Yeah, we'll move on. David, feel free to type the message in the chat box that we're talking through, and I'll ask Roberto.
All right, moving on into the Speed Nation Alpine Tour. Speed Nation Alpine Tour by rules only allow athletes that go 15 plus. They're all sanctioned by FIS as Continental Cups. Your athletes will require an advanced competitor and a FIS license, and you can find all the information on Canada Snowboard website as well. Just as a note, on the Speed Nation Alpine Tour, we have PSL and PGS, what is parallel slalom and parallel giant slalom. So depending where the event is going to be, we are hosting or one of these two disciplines or both or the other one. Last one of the national tours, we have the Speed Nation Bodycross Tour, pretty similar in terms of ages or target is 15 plus. You will be sanctioned by FIS as Continental Cups. You will require an advanced competitor license, and you will require as well a FIS license. And before to move on to the last kind of the key questions, if you have any question about what we just talked about, please feel free to ask it now.
All right, guys, feel free to ask any questions in the question box or raise a hand or chat in the chat thing, and I will answer you. All right, Roberto, so it doesn't seem like there are any more questions. Did you want to continue on?
All right. Well, we get into the last section of this webinar. And sometimes when we go to the events or where I usually travel to all the North American Cups or World Cups. But when I go to some of these events, some of the coaches or parents have questions about what is the process to put a protest in front of the jury? What is the jury, or why do I need to go to the TC meeting? So just divide in like 3 different blocks. What do I need to know before the event? What do I need to know during the event? And what do I need to know after the event? So before the event, where can I find information? Can I find it just on Canada Snowboard website, or can I just find it on the Provincial Territorial Association website? The reality is that you can find information pretty much in 3 different places. If the event is going to be sanctioned by an international federation, FIS, World Snowboard Federation, or the World Para Snowboard Federation, then you can find any information about the event going to their websites. My suggestion will be to, if you really want to go to the international federation's websites to find information, that's fine. But we do not control or double check that much information there. I'll give you an example. If for X reason we change the time of the, or we change the deal with our hotel partner, that we probably won't send that revised document to the World or the International Federation like in the second minute. We'll probably send it like 2 or 3 days after we made the change. So if you want to really find good information, I will suggest you to go either to Canada Snowboard website, where you can find any information about any event in Canada, or to your provincial and territorial snowboard association. Especially if you're looking for GRAM events or provincial or territorial series, you can find more detailed information on your provincial and territorial association. During the event, especially for coaches, why do I need to represent, I'm a coach, and why do I need to represent my athletes at the events? People don't know the why behind and the reason why we have coaches. Even at the GRAM events, even at the stage 3 events, we always, Canada's always, we're always going to reinforce to have coaches represent the athletes. And the reason why is because if something happened, if your athlete get injured, or we change the schedule and your athlete is playing with the snow with other kids, we always need to make sure there is an adult with enough experience to make sure that the athlete gets the information, or to make sure that the athlete is safe. The organizer committee is not in charge of making sure that the athlete is having breakfast before to go to the contest. We already have enough problems putting the event. So we really rely on our coaches to make sure that our athletes are prepared and in good standing before to compete. The other question that we get a lot is, can a parent represent my athlete? Not really. So at the lower stages, yes, we can see, and we don't see that many coaches, and we kind of like say, yes, you can come with your parents and represent your kids at a drum event. And we can even see that a lot provincial series. But once it gets to the higher level, where we talk about the Air Nation Tour or the Speed Nation Border Cross Tour, Speed Nation Alpine Tour, then no, we do require a certified Canada Snowboard coach to represent the athletes. Unless the parent has a coaching certification and has the right certificate to be at that event. Otherwise, we always going to require a coach. What happens if my athlete doesn't have a coach? What happens if I'm sending my kids to an Air Nation event and they don't have a coach? In that case, what we will do is to make sure that first, kind of like finding another coach that will be willing to represent your athlete during the competition. This is a risky movement because obviously probably coaches don't want to represent other athletes. And if that's the case, if we cannot find a coach, then it's up to the jury to represent that athlete. But we're going back to square one. It's not up to the organizer to represent athletes. That's why we always going to ensure that we try to reinforce the idea of send your athlete with coaches, and most importantly, certified coaches, certified Canada Snowboard coaches. Kita can explain more than me about that. Another question that we hear a lot is, what is the TC meeting? What is the team's captain meeting? And why are we hosting team's captain meeting? The team captain meeting is the official meeting before the event. So to give you an idea, pretty much everything can change up to the TC meeting. And by that, I mean that schedule can change. Even the sanction of the event can change before the TC meeting. So whatever we say at the TC meeting is what is going to happen the next day or the next hour at that competition. So when you look, for example, finding information on or website or the PTSA website, and you see, for example, oh, the event is going to start at 8 or at 9. Okay, that's just as a reference. We put it there as the ideal schedule, but the schedule that will be the one, the real schedule, will be approved during the TC meeting. Same as registration. Even if I register for the event, let's say I sign up for Air Nation Nationals, and I get there and I don't have the right Canada Snowboard membership, then you need to figure out that before the TC meeting, because if during the TC meeting they see that you don't have the right license to compete, they're going to remove you from the start list. So make sure that there's always a coach representing the athlete at every single TC meeting, and make sure that as a coach, if you have questions, is the time to make questions. During the TC meeting is when you ask questions to anything about schedule, about formats, about judging system, about patrol, about whatever you guys, any question you might have in your head, is during the TC meeting that you need to ask those questions. What is the jury? And most of the coaches, they don't actually talk directly with the jury. And I think that's something that we need to improve. The jury are the ones who are going to make decisions during the competition. Not even Canada Snowboard, not the organizer. The jury are the ones who they are running the event. So our freestyle event, we have 3 jury members. One is the technical delegate. The technical delegate is the one who looks for safety. He is the one who's going to make sure that the competition is safe enough, who checks all the V-nets, who checks the star, who makes sure that everything is safe, making sure that we have a medical plan behind, making sure that we have an insurance for that event. And he is the one representing either the International Federation or the National Federation. The second member is a head of judges. The head of judges is the boss of all the judges. He is the one who is going to tell you or tell the coaches how we're going to score these events. Are we going to score more the rails and the jumps? Are we going to score from rage 20 to 100? This is a very important and key person because he's the one who's going to score the athletes. The third one is the chief competition. Chief of competition is the eyes and ears of the organizing committee on the ground. He's basically the one who is going to try to ensure that everything that we planned during the month before for that event is going to be delivered. He's actually the main point of contact between the jury, the organizing committee, and the host resort. If you have any question about anything about the event, just go to the chief competition. He will or know the answer, or he will point you to the person who will know the answer. For speed events, we actually, obviously the head of judges is not part of the jury, but we have the finish referee. In that case, finish referee is playing a very important role because he's the one who is going to take care of the finish line of the contest. Same thing. If you have any question, general question, just go to the chief competition. Another important question is the protest side. Coaches can protest, but we cannot protest anytime. It's not like I saw something wrong during the contest and I'm going to protest to the jury directly. And there is a process to formally put a protest formally in front of the jury. During a competition, after each, let's say on a freestyle contest, after each qualification and after finals, after we post the official results, we have 15 minutes to protest in front of the jury. If you want to protest, you gotta pay first. So let's say I'm a coach and watching the qualifications of freestyle nationals, and I saw I'm not agree, or I saw something during contest that I don't like it. After the qualification, after we post results, I go either to the technical delegate or to the chief of competition or to the head of judges, and I say, I'm the coach from number 25, and I would like to formally put a protest. Then the technical delegate and the chief of competition will come to you and say, if you want to put a protest, you will need to fill out some papers, and you will need to put, usually the variance depends on the exchange between the visas, but it's around 100 Swiss francs, which we say, like, let's say $100. These $100 will be put on the table, and if the jury agrees to your protest, you will get the $100 back. If not, the jury will keep the $100. Make sure if you want to put a protest, always or bring or get something prepared. Don't just put a protest, because it's going to be your words against the words of the jury. If you're recording the competition, you have a video, you have photos, or if you have other coaches that saw the same as you, make sure that you go and you bring as much information to the jury. The jury, at the end, they are 3 people, and they're trying to see everything, but they're humans, and sometimes they make mistakes as well. So just keep in mind that we can protest after we find 15 minutes, during 15 minutes after we post the official results of qualifications and finals. And remember that it's going to be, you need to bring cash to the competitions, especially to those that are sanctioned by fees, like their high level events, like the Air Nation Freestyle Tour, the Spin Nation Border Cross Tour, and the Spin Nation Alpine Tour. We really reinforce those international rules to ensure that we don't have 20 coaches protesting at the same time. The last portion is what happens after the event. And some people ask us, like, where can I find the results? When the results will be posted? The results are, by rules, we can post we can post results up to 24 hours after the contest. When it goes down to events that are sanctioned by FIS, we need to post it between, we are allowed to post the results between 24 hours and 48 hours. If after 48 hours you don't see the results on the International Ski Federation website, then it's a big mistake, and you can call me or send me an email, and I will chase down the organizer. But usually we are pretty good, and you're going to see the result posted pretty much an hour after the contest, or 2 hours after the end of the competition. For results that are that are sanctioned by World Snowboard Federation, we're allowed to post it up to 3 days after the end of the contest. And the reason why is because the process to submit the results is a little bit long. The organizers need to send me the results to me. I need to verify the results, and then it's submitted to the World Snowboard Federation. For results that are part of the World Para Snowboard Federation, is pretty much the same. It can take up to 3 days to put the results live, and because it's a long process as well, I need to verify the results before to send it to the International Federation. For events that are not sanctioned by any international federation or provinces, they're going to post the results between 1 and 2 days. They're usually pretty good at putting their results on their provincial and territorial websites. And we do actually have as well the results linked to our website. So if you want to know, if you're looking to Canada Snowboard website and you want to check the results from this weekend, for example, you can go to our live calendar and you hit the button results, and it will take you directly to the results page. The other thing that we talk a lot about is international rankings, and especially for FIS ranking, WSF ranking, or what we formally call it Canadian ranking list, and the World Snowboard Federation ranking. For the FIS ranking, you can see it on the FIS website, And on the FIS website, you can search your athlete, and it will tell you all the events he had been over the last year, results from every event, and it will tell you how many points they have on motocross, alpine, freestyle, and it will actually give you the ranking of your athlete against the rest of the world. For the Canadian ranking list or the World Snow Federation, and I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of questions about this, you can see the Canadian athletes ranking on our website, and you can see as well the international ranking on the World Snow Federation website. I will answer any question about that after. I'm sure some of our freestyle coaches will have a lot of questions about the Canadian ranking list, but just keep in mind that the Canadian ranking list is live on our website. Like, our FIS ranking is not live on our website, but you can see directly into the International Ski Federation website. For the World Snow Federation ranking, you can see directly on the World Para Snowboard website. Just keep in mind that the World Snow Federation website is not as easy to manage as the other ones. It sometimes gets a little bit tricky to find the results, but you can actually go directly and enter the name of the athlete, and you can see all the different points of your athlete. So at this point, if you guys have any other questions related to this section, or you have any other, or you want me to explain a little bit more any of these questions that are listed here, please feel free to ask now.
So we actually have a lot of questions. John Lindstone says, is there an LTAD Stage 8 version of the Grom series?
Is there a LTAD 8?
Yes. LTAD Stage 8 version.
Okay, so for anybody who wants to come and enjoy competitions. Yes and no. I will say, as part of the, as I said before, we are trying to just look to competitive pathways or series or events that are helping to bring future athletes to that competitive pathway. For the Stage 8, or let's say like me, who I'm like 30 and I still love to compete, we do have some events that are part of the Stage 8 and that we actually promote as part of our pathway. At this point, as part of the Stage 8, we only have bank slaloms. We do have, there is several bank slaloms across Canada, but we have 3 bank slaloms that are sanctioned by Canada Snowboard that follows under insurance liability company. And one of them is happening in Alberta. The other one is happening in BC, Big White, and the last one is happening in Beaver Valley in Ontario. We're trying to bring as much as possible bank slaloms, and the reason why is because the bank slalom is one of these competitions that everybody can do. Like, you don't need to be a professional snowboarder to enjoy bank slalom. And over the last 2 years, we were trying to kind of like bring under our umbrella more bank slaloms, but it's not an easy task, especially because some of these bank slaloms are kind of like organized by a resort. They have already their own structure, and it's kind of difficult to make them part of or kind of our wings. But over like 2 years, we were able to bring these 3 events, and our goal is to have by 2020 at least one Canada Snowboard Bank Slalom at each province and territory, and that we can just target as the Canadian Bank Slaloms.
I don't know if you have, or if you read my mind, Roberto, but John's next question was, is there a WSF Bank Slalom Series for 2018?
Yeah, so the bank slaloms, the World Snowboard Federation actually sanction or promotes international bank slaloms. All or 3 bank slaloms in Canada are part of the let's say, World Snowboard Federation Bank Slalom Tour. There is other events. The only problem is, as you can imagine, anything that is on Canada Snowboard website or that we promote as a Canada Snowboard event, we need to check a couple of checkboxes. That we need to at least ensure that it kind of like meets the minimum requirements to be part of Canada Snowboard, and most importantly, to be part of a liability insurance. So that's why, for example, we're not going to promote the zigzag bank slalom as an example, but we're going to promote the bank slalom in Big White, and we're going to promote the bank slalom in Alberta. The reason why is because our provinces and territories for these three bank slaloms, they oversee and they in a certain way control those bank slaloms, and they are ensuring that there is a minimum safety level for those events. They're ensuring that the officials that are there are certified, and they're ensuring as well that like everybody that compete, if you get hurt, will have an insurance behind that can cover any safety problem. But yes, you can check, you can see all the on the World Snowboard Tour. I can tell you there is a section on Canada Snowboard website that talks about bank slaloms, and that's under me. I still need to update that section, but we will try to update it during this week, and that way you guys can look through all the bank slaloms that we have sanctioned by Canada Snowboard, and you will be able to register directly.
Perfect. So we're going to move on to the next question. Caroline says, as a parent, what can you do if the coach won't go?
Okay, that's a very sensitive question. What can I do if my coach don't go to, I guess, to represent your athlete to an event? It depends. There's a lot of factors that you need to look at. First thing is what kind of program that coach or that club is providing you. Sometimes the club is just only providing just a coaching experience at that resort. They don't include the competitive component. If they do include like, yes, and your kid is going to be with me training every weekend, and then he's going to compete. The factor that he's going to compete, and if they're promoting the competition level, they're promoting like the competition component, they need to ensure as well they need to be there. Competition is a very important piece of the entire training factor. So my suggestion will be like, first check what kind of program your kid is, what kind of program the club sell you, and try to understand a little bit more if they're actually providing the competition component. Try to talk with them. If you see that there's still they're not buying into it, the best way will be to contact, in this case, Kira, which is our coaching program coordinator, and she can help you to kind of like get a little more into it. Always before to kind of like push too much on it, make sure that you actually keep informing your provincial territorial association. At the end, a club, for example, in Ontario is under the umbrella of Ontario Snowboard. So sometimes Snowboard Ontario, they're not probably aware of what is happening in the club, and they are their members, so they need to make sure that we are providing a good service to our athletes, parents, and our stakeholders. So get in contact with your club, check what kind of program they have. If still have problems, contact your provincial territorial association, and if they see that it needs to go up to Canada Snowboard, they will contact, in this case, Kita or myself, or even one of the directors.
All right, so next question is from Jared Anderson, and he said, what if the athlete is 18 plus? Do they still need a coach to compete?
Technically, yes. And I know that's something that we were talking over the years. Can an athlete represent itself? The reality is not. And there is two factors. One is from a liability insurance standpoint, an athlete has an athlete membership. An athlete is an athlete. He's there to compete. He's gonna be there to win. The coach is there to ensure that the athlete is capable of actually riding at that level, or at the end the coach has the last call. Like, if as a coach I see that my athlete is not doing well, or he's just too excited, or he drank 5 Red Bulls before to come to the event, and I'm scared about the safety of himself and the rest of the athlete, the coach job is to ensure that to pull out of the list that athlete. So the reason why we want to have coaches at all the events as much as possible is to avoid that, to ensure that if an athlete is there to compete, he's there for win. And sometimes they don't see if they're capable or not, or they're just crossing the line they're crossing the line and see like, well, they're going too far of their skills or their possibilities. So it's important always to have a coach there that can see from a outside perspective, is the athlete can or not compete that day. Remember always that if during a contest a jury member or an entire jury thinks that an athlete is putting in risk and other athletes or itself, they're going to remove him from the start list, and they can do that. And there is nothing they can say. And it happens, like happened before at national championship, where we had an athlete who was clearly not in good standing to compete. And in this case, he was with a coach, and the coach says, yeah, he can compete. But the jury actually decided to remove him from the start list. So first, make sure that you have a coach, because a coach is the one who will know you more than anybody else to see if you can or not compete. And secondly, the coach is going to represent you. An athlete cannot represent himself in front of the jury. That's why you need to have a coach. The coach is going to speak on behalf of you in front of the jury. It's going to fight for you in front of the jury.
All right, so the next question is from Sharon, and she said, I had heard in the past that an athlete cannot leave the finish corral if protesting. Is this still true?
I guess we're talking about bordercross.
I'd say motocross and alpine.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Sharon, I think after this webinar, we'll kind of explain. We will have a second webinar that is more focused on rules. That Kita will explain a bit more when we're going to do it. But we will explain more that question during the second webinar. But just to give you like a little bit of overview, yes, depending, we're always going to follow FIS rules when we're hosting events. By FIS rules, especially, let's take, for example, motocross. If I'm doing motocross finals and I'm doing like I'm 4 riders going down the course and across the finish line, before to send the next ladder or the next heat, if there is a protest, we need to deal with it before we send it the next heat. So that's why we don't allow athletes to leave the finish corral. But it has some variance. It's different, the protest between qualifications and the protest during finals. But again, I'd rather prefer to take that to the second webinar because we're going to look more into the details of every single discipline. That way we can actually get more deeper on this conversation, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to announce that Roberto and I are going to be doing another webinar February 28th, and it's going to be on the FIS rule book, the World Snowboard Federation Tour rules, and the World Para Snowboard rules. So we can get into the specifics regarding protests. There are a couple more questions about protests, Roberto.
Yep.
Caroline says, is it 15 or 50 minutes? After results being posted to protest?
Yeah, sorry, my Spanglish sometimes gets a bit. It's 15, 1-5.
1-5. Okay, perfect. And then Sharon says, can a protest only be permitted by a coach or an athlete?
No, technically only by a coach. An athlete doesn't have, cannot represent itself in front of the jury. That's why we always going to require to have a coach.
Perfect. Stacy Hicks says bank slalom is stage 8. We have a banked and slopes so they can hit boxes to stage 8. Andrew Rogers says, if I have an athlete who wants to go to a higher level event that we aren't attending as a club, I reach out to our PSA who hooks us up with another club in advance to coordinate.
Mm-hmm.
Gab says, Jared, you're too old to compete. Sharon says, thanks. Stacy says, and the parent can't protest either.
Exactly. The parent, it needs to be a certified coach to put a formal protest in front of the jury.
All right, and we have one more question from, I'm just gonna run through. So Cam Farrell has another question. Cam, I see your hand is up, so I'm just gonna unmute you so you can speak. Cam, you're also gonna have to unmute yourself on the application, or you can type into the question box or into the chat box. And we'll just give Cam a couple minutes to unmute his mic or for anybody else to continue typing. Pat Godet says, I have seen many athletes protest on their own. Is it a written rule that they cannot?
Yes, at the international level, yes, it is. You're going to see a lot. That's what I'm saying. At the lower level stages, because of the lack of athletes represented by coaches, you're going to see some athletes kind of like protesting themselves. However, that's not the ideal situation. That's why we require to have coaches always representing athletes to ensure that is the coach. Protesting is one of the kind of types of representation of an athlete.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Cam.
Oh, hi. Sorry about that. I'm on my phone on a treadmill, so this is a little multitasking.
It's all good.
No problem.
I was just going to say that there are two different protest procedures for qualifications and finals for alpine and border cross. In finals, you don't need the $100 because everything has to be solved before they leave the finish corral. Versus for qualifications, it's 15 minutes after everything's been posted.
Mm-hmm. That's something that, like what Cam said is right. That's something that during the second webinar, we'll talk a little bit more deeper on that.
Perfect. Cam, did you have anything else? Oh, no problem. All right, so I'm just going to And Kimberly Sutherland says, usually for us, the coach is at the top. If an athlete is trying to protest but can't do it on their own, how does that work?
Well, that's where like the logistics between the athletes and coaches needs to be well organized. At the border cross and alpine, sometimes coaches collaborate each other, and that way you're gonna have a coach at the start. Even if you're just have a club with one coach and you have another coach with one club, well, like the coach will take care of his athletes and the other athletes at the start, while the other one is gonna take care of the other athletes. Their athletes and the other athletes at the finish. Obviously, everything goes back to how the coaches gonna work together, or like some clubs come with two coaches, so one is gonna start at the start, one is gonna be the finish. But it always goes back to the logistics. At the end, one of the things that we need to remember is that even if I'm at the start or I'm the finish, there's always going to be a jury. We're going to try always to have a jury member at the top and other at the bottom. Everybody has radios. Every jury member has radios. You don't need to reach all three jury members at the same time. as soon as you can reach one, it's fine. On the other hand, even if I don't find a jury member, but let's say I'm in the border cross and I see one of the gatekeepers or one of the gate sections right over there, they do have as well radios, so I can go to him and say like, can you reach me a jury member? I want to talk to him or put a protest. So if you don't find a jury member, don't get scared. Try to find somebody with a radio, and they will point you to the jury, chief of com, or the TD, or the head of judge, or the senior referee.
Perfect. All right. I don't see any more questions. Anything else in the chat box or any more hands raised? So I think we're going to conclude this. We ran a little bit over time, but that's okay. This
Good.
this webinar was actually our second most successful webinar in Canada snowboard history in terms of since day one. So I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day, and to Roberto for taking the time out of his day to do this. Shelly says thank you.
Thank you.
If you guys want to get in contact with any of us, feel free to reach out to Roberto or I regarding anything that was covered tonight. My email is kita, K-I-T-A, McCrory, MCRORY, at canadasnowboard.ca, and Roberto's is Roberto at canadasnowboard.ca. I'm also recording tonight's webinar, so if you wanted to have this sent to you, just send me an email and let me know, and I'll make sure to send this to you privately. It is also going to be posted on our Canada Snowboard website for future use. So I think that's it. Nobody else has posted anything, so thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, Roberto. Bye.
Bye.